The day began like any other as I sat in our comfortable living room mindlessly scrolling through my phone. Suddenly, the unmistakable sound of a car pulling up outside broke the late-night silence. Instinctively, I knew it had to be her. My wife, Emmy, returning from a routine business trip that had lasted 3 days. While her professional travels were nothing out of the ordinary, what struck me this time was the unusually cheerful tone in her recent messages. As the door swung open there, she stood in the doorway holding her suitcase and phone. Her face radiated a rare joy that I hadn't witnessed in a while. She was laughing likely at a joke or message on her phone, and the sight nearly made me smile. Perhaps she had a successful trip, a fruitful meeting, or received some good news from her boss. Her bubbly voice filled the room as she greeted me with a warm "Hey honey," while kicking off her heels and placing her suitcase by the door. You won't believe how crazy this. The trip was a success. Despite the endless meetings, we aced the presentation, which will have a huge impact on the company's future. Emmy beamed as she shared the news with me. That's fantastic, Amy. It sounds like everything went well, I remarked. She nodded vigorously, her grin never faltering, and then she excitedly recounted the exquisite dining experience at the venue they had taken us to. I observed her animated storytelling, noting a newfound radiance in her demeanor. There was a shift in her energy that I couldn't quite pinpoint, along with a carefree laughter that seemed to have been missing for a while. For a brief moment, a twinge of envy crept in, not because of her happiness, but because I had not been the one to bring it about. I rose from my seat and approached her, enveloping her in a gentle hug. You look so happy, I teased. Maybe I should send you on more business trips. Amy chuckled again, though this time with a hint of nerves. Perhaps, she replied, pulling away. Could you please grab her suitcase? I just need to quickly unpack, she said as she headed towards our bedroom. Something didn't feel quite right to me. Perhaps it was the way she avoided making eye contact or how tightly she held onto her phone, almost as if it held a secret. Whatever the reason, I couldn't shake the sense that there was more to her enthusiasm than just a successful business trip. As she disappeared into the bedroom, I lingered in the living room, gazing at the now empty doorway. It was then that I noticed an unsettling change. Her laughter had ceased and an eerie silence had settled over the house. My curiosity got the best of me, prompting me to approach the bedroom. My steps were muffled by the carpet as I drew closer. Upon reaching the door, I overheard her whispering anxiously to herself, "No, no, no. This can't be happening, not now." Peeking inside, I observed her sitting at the edge of the bed with her suitcase open before her. In her hands, she held a piece of paper, her expression now drained of color, the earlier smile replaced by a look of concern. She had completely vanished, replaced by an expression of sheer panic. Her hands trembled as she gazed at whatever she had discovered in her suitcase. As I entered the room, I inquired, "What's the matter?" She startled at the sound of my voice, hastily tucking the paper back into her luggage. "Nothing," she replied with a forced laugh that contradicted the fear in her eyes. "Just work-related stuff." I arched an eyebrow skeptically. "Work stuff? You seem petrified." She shook her head briskly, closing the suitcase with a sharp snap. "I'm okay," she assured, standing up and swiftly passing me. "Just exhausted. I'll explain tomorrow, all right?" Before I could respond, she had already rushed out of the room, heading toward the bathroom. The door slammed shut, leaving me puzzled and more suspicious than ever. An unmistakable feeling gnawed at me that she was concealing something, compelling me to uncover the truth. And so I made a decision that surprised even myself. I waited until she returned. While I was showering, I decided to take a peek inside her suitcase. What I discovered inside sent a chill down my spine. Pausing for a moment, I gazed at the suitcase as if it held forbidden secrets. My heart raced and my palms grew sweaty, but my curiosity got the better of me. I needed to uncover what she was concealing so desperately. With trembling hands, I unzipped the suitcase and lifted the lid. At first glance, it seemed like a typical travel bag. Clothes, toiletries, some folded documents. However, upon further inspection, I stumbled upon something that made my stomach churn. Beneath her garments sat a neatly wrapped gift box adorned with a red ribbon. It bore no name, yet its size and shape unsettled me instantly. It bore an intimate and personal aura. Carefully, I opened the box, feeling my hands quiver. Inside, I discovered a daring black lingerie set much racier than anything she had ever worn in my presence. My thoughts raced with uncertainty. Why would she take such an item on a business trip? And more importantly, why without my knowledge? Unaware of its existence until that moment, I discovered a small card nestled within the fabric folds. Reading the message inscribed in her familiar handwriting, "For when we're finally alone," sent a chill down my spine and left a sense of dread in my gut. This was no mere oversight. It was damning evidence that my wife had been deceiving me. As I sat on the bed, card grasped tightly in my hand, myriad questions raced through my mind. Who was the mysterious we? Was it someone from her workplace, perhaps a person she had met during this trip? Seeking clarity but knowing that confronting her without more information would be futile, I resolved to handle this situation with caution. I carefully returned everything to its original state, closed the suitcase, and placed it back where she had left it. Turning to my phone, I tremblingly searched for any clues of unusual activity, my fingers barely able to type due to nervousness. Despite my shaking hands, I managed to log into our shared phone account to investigate further. As I delved deeper into the information, I've uncovered a sense of unease settled in the pit of my stomach. Scrolling through her call log revealed numerous unfamiliar numbers, some with extended durations. One specific number caught my attention. It had been frequently dialed throughout her entire trip, sometimes multiple times in a day. A surge of anxiety washed over me as I entered the number into a reverse lookup service. Within moments, the results displayed the name Ethan Wren. While the name didn't ring any bells, the implications were crystal clear. Ethan Wren played a significant role in her business journey. As I stared at the name on the screen, questions swirled in my mind. Was he a colleague I had overlooked? A client perhaps? Or was there something more between them? Despite my reluctance to jump to conclusions, the mounting evidence painted a worrying picture. Just as I was processing this distressing revelation, the sound of the bathroom door opening startled me. I swiftly locked my phone and stashed it in my pocket as Amy entered the room, fresh-faced with hair still damp from her shower. Her expression held a mix of guilt and apprehension as she looked at me, igniting the storm of uncertainty within me. As if sensing my unease, she casually inquired, "Are you okay? You look a bit pale." I managed a fake smile and replied, "Yeah, just tired." She nodded, but her gaze lingered on me longer than usual before retreating under the covers, feigning indifference. As I lay beside her, unable to sleep, my mind raced with suspicions. The images of the card, the lingerie, and the name Ethan Reynolds haunted me each time I closed my eyes. Determined to uncover the truth without alerting her, I plotted my next move as the light of dawn seeped through the curtains. Grabbing my phone, I resolved to start investigating discreetly. It was clear that she underestimated my determination. The following morning, I made a conscious effort to play it cool, biding my time until I had gathered enough evidence to confront her. Amy appeared calm and collected as she woke up and went about her morning routine, but the lingering memory of her panicked expression from the night before stayed with me as we had breakfast together. Wanting to break the tension, I tried to engage her in conversation about her trip. "Any interesting stories to share?" I inquired casually, sipping my coffee. Her initial hesitation was barely noticeable before she replied with a smile, downplaying the trip as just work-related activities. I nodded understandingly, though I sensed there was more to the story. As she spoke about the success of their pitch to a client, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was hiding something. While Amy was preoccupied with her phone after breakfast, I knew I needed to find a way to investigate further. One on the kitchen counter. My heart raced as I grabbed it and opened it. She'd always been careless with her passcode. It was still our wedding date, ironic as that was. I quickly navigated to her messages, my fingers trembling. There it was, a string of texts between her and Ethan Reynolds. My stomach churned as I read the messages. "Amy, I can't stop thinking about this weekend. It was perfect. Ethan, you were perfect. I miss you already, Amy. Me too. I hate sneaking around, but it's worth it." I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. The messages were explicit, leaving no doubt about what had happened on her so-called business trip. My chest tightened as I scrolled further, finding photos she'd sent him. Selfies in a hotel room, her in that same black lingerie. I couldn't look anymore. I locked the phone and put it back exactly where I'd found it. When she came out of the shower, I pretended nothing had happened. "I'm heading out for a bit," I said, grabbing my keys. "Need to run some errands." "Okay," she said, barely glancing up from her phone. I muttered "see you later" as I drove off, a storm of emotions swirling within me: anger, heartbreak, and determination. I was not one to overlook such a situation, but I knew better than to act impulsively. I needed to proceed cautiously and methodically, ensuring I had a plan before confronting her. Pulling over in a secluded parking lot, I made a decision that I never thought I would. I called a private investigator. Jack, the investigator I spoke to, attentively listened as I detailed my predicament. He agreed to take on the case, requesting information such as her scheduled details about the other individual and access to any relevant evidence like emails, phone logs, and social media content. Providing Jack with all the information I had, including the suspicious messages I had stumbled upon, I felt a glimmer of relief as he assured me he would start his investigation immediately and keep me informed of any findings. Despite the turmoil of the situation, I found solace in the fact that I was taking proactive steps. In the days that followed, I maintained a facade of normalcy, interacting with Amy as usual, laughing at her jokes and listening to her stories, all the while waiting anxiously for updates from Jack. I kissed her goodnight, wrestling with the weight of what I knew. It was the most difficult thing I had ever done, but I held on to the belief that the truth was worth the delay. Then one evening, Jack's call came, his voice grave. "We found something," he mentioned. "You need to see this." The call left me on edge, unsure of what was to come. Jack didn't provide details, only urging me to meet him in person that night. Amy sat on the sofa, occupied with her phone, appearing unfazed. I couldn't help but steal glances at her, bewildered by her calm facade despite the looming deception. Her smiles and casual remarks felt like further wounds. Yet I maintained my composure, masking the growing storm within me. The following day, I fabricated a pretext of a sudden work commitment and met Jack at a quaint diner at the town's outskirts. He was already present with a manila folder placed on the table. In front of me, my heart raced as I took a seat in the booth across from Jack. "You may not like what I have to show you," Jack said in a hushed, serious tone as he pushed the folder my way with a solemn expression. "But you need to see it." With shaky hands, I opened the folder and was met with a series of grainy yet discernible photos. In the images, I saw Amy laughing and getting cozy with a man I immediately recognized as Ethan Reynolds. They appeared to be sitting together at a hotel bar, their closeness unmistakably intimate. One picture captured Ethan's hand resting on her thigh, while another showed them holding hands as they entered a hotel elevator. It made my stomach churn, but the worst was still to come. Jack indicated a USB drive nestled in the folder. "There's more evidence here," he said, referring to surveillance footage from the hotel that corroborated everything. I couldn't bring myself to view it right there in the bustling diner. The photos alone evoked a surge of anger within me. How long had this deceit been unfolding? As I pressed on, my voice barely audible, I inquired, "How long has this been going on?" Jack disclosed that it had been at least a few months. They had been secretly meeting while she traveled for work. The revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. For months, she had been deceiving me, carrying on a relationship with this man behind my back as I sat at home believing in her and loving her. The sense of betrayal was crushing, but I willed myself to remain composed. I needed to keep a clear head. "What else did you uncover?" I probed. Jack hesitated before producing a printed document from the folder. It was a booking confirmation for a weekend escapade, another trip planned in 2 weeks. They were set to rendezvous at the Zord Resort in Miami. My fists clenched as I gazed at the evidence. She showed no signs of stopping. In fact, she was already arranging their next getaway. The sheer audacity of her actions sent a surge of fury through me, but I held back my anger. If I was to confront her, it had to be on my own terms, ensuring that there was no escaping the situation. "Thank you, Jack," I expressed, my tone remaining steady despite the turmoil within me. "You've already done more than enough." Jack acknowledged my gratitude with a sympathetic gaze. "If you ever need more help, just reach out. I'm truly sorry you're having to endure this." Leaving the diner, I clutched the folder and USB drive tightly against me, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. Yet amidst it all, I found a strange sense of clarity. No longer shrouded in suspicion or uncertainty, I now held the cold, undeniable truth in my hands, and it was time to determine my next steps. That night, parked in an empty lot, I sat contemplating the USB drive in my palm. I knew I had to view its contents, but a part of me was hesitant, fearful of what revelations it held. Nevertheless, I couldn't resist the urge to discover the truth. Plugging the drive into my laptop, I accessed the files. The videos were organized by timestamp, depicting Amy and Ethan's encounters in chronological order. The initial clip captured their joyful reunion in the hotel lobby, their expressions bright as they saw each other for the first time. The other clip showed them at the bar laughing and talking like a couple on their honeymoon. And then there was the elevator footage. Just a few seconds of them kissing before the doors closed. My chest tightened as I skipped to the final clip, showing them entering a hotel room together. The timestamp confirmed it was late at night, and they didn't come out until morning. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my seat, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. The evidence was overwhelming, but it also gave me a strange sense of power. For the first time in days, I felt like I had the upper hand. She thought she could keep this hidden, but now I had everything I needed to expose the truth. Confronting her wasn't enough. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done, but I also wanted to do it in a way that left no room for excuses or denials. She had lied to me. "I thought you mentioned something about Miami a few weeks ago." Her reaction was priceless. Her hand tightened around her mug. In a moment, she resembled a deer caught in headlights. "Oh, that's not confirmed yet," she stammered. "I'll let you know if it happens." "Cool," I replied, mustering a smile. "Let me know. Maybe I'll come with you this time." Her nervous laughter betrayed her unease. Over the next few days, I maintained my facade of normalcy, all the while discreetly planning my confrontation. I diligently backed up all evidence, the photos, texts, and videos, saving them on several devices. I even printed out key screenshots as a precaution. This wouldn't be a volatile argument. I sought irrefutable evidence, leaving her no room to wriggle out of the truth. Then the perfect opportunity arose. One evening, as she idly scrolled through her phone on the couch, I casually mentioned an old memory. "Hey, remember when we used to watch those true crime shows together?" I asked, adopting a light tone. She looked up, nodding with a smile. "Yeah, those were fun." "Why?" "I was thinking we should watch something like that again," I suggested. See how people solve mysteries." I let my words hang in the air, watching her reaction. Her smile faltered slightly, and she shifted uncomfortably. "Sure, maybe sometime," she said, her voice tight. That was the last piece of the puzzle. I had planted enough doubt to make her uneasy, and now it was time to pull the rug out from under her. The following night, I set the stage. I invited her to sit down with me in the living room, telling her I wanted to have a serious talk. She looked curious, but not overly concerned. She had no idea what was coming. As she sat down, I placed the manila folder on the coffee table between us. Her eyes darted to it, and I could see the faintest flicker of panic in her expression. "What's that?" she asked, her voice shaky. "Something I need to show you," I said, keeping my tone calm. "But first I need to ask you something. Is there anything you want to tell me, Amy? Anything at all?" She froze, her face draining of color. "What do you mean?" "You know exactly what I mean," I said, my voice firm but controlled. "I'm giving. You have one opportunity to be honest with me. If there's something you've been keeping from me, now is the time to reveal it." Her lips moved as if to speak, but no words emerged. She appeared to be searching for an excuse, yet none materialized. When she remained silent, I reached for the folder and pushed the photos towards her on the table. "These were taken during your business trip," I stated, my tone harsher. "Take a good look." Her eyes widened as they met the images, her hands visibly shaking. "I can explain," she stuttered. Interrupting her, I retorted, "I'm sure you can. But first, perhaps you should see this." Retrieving my laptop, I played the elevator footage for her. The blood drained from her face as she watched. "It's not what it seems," she pleaded softly. Angered, I responded, "It's exactly what it appears to be. You deceived me. You betrayed my trust. And you believed you could evade consequences." As she started to speak, I interjected, "I am aware of Ethan. I am aware of Miami. I am privy to all the details, Amy. So tell me, how long did you intend to continue this facade? Were you merely waiting?" In the midst of discovering the truth, tears welled up in Amy's eyes, but I remained unmoved by any sense of pity. This was not the time for sympathy. This was the moment where she had to confront the repercussions of her choices. Amy sat motionless, fixated on the evidence before her. Despite her tears, I refused to be swayed by her emotional display. Now was not the time for her insincere sorrow. What I wanted from her was unadulterated honesty, devoid of excuses or sugarcoating. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. "It just happened." Leaning back in my chair with crossed arms, I challenged her. "It just happened? Is that really the best explanation you have, Amy? Affairs don't simply unfold on their own. You deliberate, you lie, you make plans, you sneak around. Don't belittle your actions by portraying them as happenstance." As she gazed down, intertwining her hands in a futile attempt to evade the gravity of her deeds, she muttered, "I didn't mean for it to escalate like this." "Escalate?" I echoed sharply, my tone escalating in tandem. "You've been engaging in this deceit for months, and now you're already planning another trip. Were you planning to go with him to Miami? How far did you intend to take this? Were you considering abandoning me, leaving me behind like yesterday's news?" She shook her head vigorously, her voice filled with desperation. "No, I swear I never meant to leave you. You just what?" I interjected, striking the table with my hand. "Were you seeking some excitement, something new? Wasn't I enough for you?" Her silence spoke volumes. She couldn't meet my gaze. In that moment of heavy silence, the unspoken truths lingered in the suffocating air. Finally, she spoke, her voice almost inaudible. "I never stopped loving you," she whispered. I let out a cynical laugh. "You don't do this to someone you love, Amy. You don't deceive them, break their trust, and sneak off to hotels with someone else if you truly love them. So spare me that line, because I'm not buying it." Her tears flowed freely now as she buried her face in her hands. "I don't know why I did it," she sobbed. "I regret my actions, Amy. It is evident that I was foolish and self-centered, thinking only of myself. However, it is time for you to reflect on your actions. This situation will not conclude with you in tears while I forgive you. There are repercussions for what you have done." As panic filled her teary eyes, she asked, "What do you mean?" I responded by presenting a stack of printed screenshots and declaring that they would be sent to our lawyer as I initiate divorce proceedings. Her reaction was one of disbelief and shock. Despite her pleas for reconciliation, I stood firm in my decision, emphasizing that trust had been irreparably broken after her months of deceit and infidelity. She wept uncontrollably, but I refused to be swayed by guilt. This was her affair to rectify, and she had to face the consequences. As the fallout unfolded, I found myself standing up and taking hold of the folder and laptop. "I will be staying at a hotel tonight," I declared firmly. "I need space to map out my next moves. You can remain here, but don't anticipate a return to normalcy. This is the beginning of the end, Amy." As I headed towards the door, she pleaded, her voice trembling, "Please don't go. I'll do whatever it takes, just don't leave." Pausing at the threshold, I glanced back at her once more. Despite her broken and desperate state, I felt nothing but numbness. "You've already made your choice," I spoke softly. "You chose him over me." With those words, I left, closing the door behind me. Driving without direction, I tried to clear my mind. A poisonous mix of anger, betrayal, and heartache churned within me. I never envisioned my life reaching this point, blindsided by the one I trusted most. Amy's pleas lingered in my mind, only serving to fuel my anger. Her concern wasn't for me. It was for getting caught. Eventually, I pulled over to take a moment for myself. I arrived at a small, inexpensive roadside motel that provided the solitude I needed, a temporary escape from her. Checking in, I sat on the edge of the bed, gazing at the folder I brought along. Opening it, I reviewed the evidence inside. Each photo, message, and detail reinforcing my irreversible decision. Amy had crossed a boundary that could not be undone. The following day, I contacted a divorce attorney named Alan, recommended by a colleague. Sharing every detail of Amy's infidelity and the evidence I possessed, Alan attentively listened without passing judgment. He then presented my legal options. "Based on the evidence you have, this could be a straightforward case," Alan remarked. "But it ultimately depends on what you seek to achieve. Are you aiming for a swift resolution or something more?" Reflecting for a moment, conflicting emotions surfaced within me. While a part of me desired retribution to mirror the anguish Amy caused, another part simply yearned for closure. "I prefer a clean break," I responded decisively. Alan agreed that she shouldn't walk away without consequences. Alan nodded. Okay then. Let's begin working on the documents today. Do you have a temporary place to stay? Yes, I do, I replied, even though the motel didn't really feel like a proper accommodation. I'll manage. Upon ending the call, a peculiar sense of relief washed over me. For the first time in days, I had a concrete plan. I wasn't just stewing in self-pity. I was taking charge. Later that day, Jack called with somber news. There's something important you need to know, he began. Ethan's wife has discovered the affair. I was taken aback. He's married. Yes, Jack confirmed. And his wife is not handling it well. She's threatening to expose everything if Amy doesn't step back. A bitter chuckle escaped me. The irony was almost too much to bear. Amy wasn't only affecting our marriage. She was also causing distress in someone else's life. Let her go public, I declared. Perhaps it's time Amy faces the consequences of having her world crumble around her. The days that ensued turned out to be a whirlwind, but not quite in the way I had anticipated. Alan swiftly moved with the divorce papers after being ejected, while I made sure everything was prepared. Amy appeared as a mere shadow of her former self, no longer exuding her confident and bubbly demeanor. Instead, she was now enveloped in a quiet, desperate sadness. Despite her repeated attempts at apologizing, I stood my ground. In one of our final conversations, I firmly told her, I can't do this anymore, Amy. I deserve better. You've made your choices, now you have to live with them. I'm no longer your safety net. Her tears failed to sway me. The countless sleepless nights grieving the life I thought we had led me to a point where her emotions no longer had an impact on me. The divorce proceedings proceeded smoothly, with Amy not contesting the evidence I had against her. We fairly divided our assets and I left with the house. Surprisingly, Ethan's wife chose to make their affair public, causing a brutal fallout for both Amy and Ethan. However, their turmoil no longer concerned me. What struck me the most was the sense of freedom that washed over me when I finally released the pent-up anger and feelings of betrayal. After years in a relationship that turned out to be less stable than expected, losing Amy marked a fresh start rather than the end of the world. I devoted myself to rebuilding my life by rekindling old friendships, rediscovering neglected hobbies, and prioritizing my own happiness for the first time in ages. It was a challenging journey, with occasional waves of pain resurfacing, but gradually becoming less frequent. One evening, a couple of months later, I found myself immersed in a book at a coffee shop, reveling in the tranquility. That's when I crossed paths with Rachel, who was seated at the adjacent table, struggling to juggle her coffee and laptop. Need a hand? I offered with a smile. She chuckled, her eyes brightening. Thanks. I'm usually more coordinated than this, I swear. Our conversation flowed effortlessly, and before I knew it, hours had flown by. Rachel was warm, funny, and engaging, sparking a glimmer of hope in me for the first time in what seemed like an eternity. As we exchanged numbers and bid farewell that evening, I realized my brokenness had healed. Amy's betrayal had caused pain, but it didn't shatter me. I emerged stronger, more self-assured, knowing my worth and my aspirations. Moving forward wasn't about erasing the past. It was about looking ahead. Leaving the coffee shop, I felt unburdened, liberated, prepared for what was to come. Life's unexpected twists may prompt a reassessment, yet they can pave the way for something greater if embraced. Betrayal didn't mark the end of my story. It heralded a fresh beginning, and for that I am thankful.